is.
These are NPR bubbles.
Rafa, this is for you, my man. All right, let's go ahead and kick this thing off. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
You know? Hey.
Cheers,
Rafa,
guys.
to you.
Yeah.
Man, cheers. Lovely.
Yeah.
Remind me of this
That's
all over
the-
myself.
That's the champagne method.
That's the champagne method. Okay, well, welcome back to Bunch the Podcast. We are here. I have no idea what day it is. Rafa, can you check Google for that?
It is August 3rd
August
of the year
3rd.
of the Lord 2022.
2022. It's a beautiful, hot Wednesday afternoon here in downtown Great Barrington. And we are so very lucky to have such awesome new friends and guests with us here tonight. I'd like to welcome Matt and Kat here from the Berkshire Cider Project.
All right.
Welcome.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for having us.
Hey. So I wanted to bring these guys onto the podcast because they totally embody what new businesses could, should, and would be looking like here in the Berkshires. I'm such a fan of the product, of you both, of your business and your missions. And I wanted to, I don't have a lot of things that I want to get to tonight, but I wanted to hang out with you, and I definitely want to go ahead and have, as we taste through some of these ciders, have discussions for our guests that are not as fortunate as I am to be able to run through your lineup on a weekly or bi-weekly occasion, or have them on hand at all times. So I think we should just go ahead and have a nice conversation, a little bit of background on both of you, where you're coming from, a little bio on your story and your business. And while we do that, let's make sure we're giving some highlights as far as what we're drinking, the story behind it, and integrate those things and see where this goes. So
Love it.
why don't you start with what we're drinking, and then we'll hop into who made it.
Yeah, so this is our champagne cider, champagne method cider. This kind of, in an interesting way, this kind of started it all, because big picture, this really came out of, we got married about 5 years ago up here in the Berkshires. Cat families from the Berkshires, spent a lot of time up here. And we had been making cider, and we can go back a little further later, but we had been making cider as sort of a hobby. But then we made a bunch of cider for the wedding. We wanted to have a party. We wanted to make this cider. But we also, wanted sparkling wine at our wedding. We wanted champagne. And the reality is, we don't, have any really East Coast champagne, in general, but certainly not in the Berkshires. And we were making cider and fell in love with other people who were making cider in the same method and the same kind of dry, meaning no sugar, traditional kind of wine bottle format, made for that kind of perfect wine pour in a wine glass. And so I think really the lighthouse for this brand is this champagne method cider. But it takes a little bit longer. So this is a cider that actually came from our first harvest, pulling from, we can talk about where we get our apples and how we source, but pulling from the apples we got that first year, then fermented and then aged secondarily in the bottle, which is the champagne method, the traditional champagne method. So cider that's re-fermented in the bottle, so all the bubbles are natural, and then we literally riddle them the same way you see all the old French guys turning the bottles in their caves for
We don't
months.
quite do that.
Well, I pick them up on the pallet jack and I kind of shake them a little bit. So
It's a Berkshire riddling method.
It's a little country vibe.
Little shimmy shake.
Maybe we'll have a forklift one day we can actually do it with rather than just the pallet jack. But then, you hand disgorge it so that, you freeze the neck. You put them in this glycol solution. You freeze the yeast, which has dropped down to the bottom, and you flip the top one more time. Yeast goes shooting out. You're left with this clean, sparkling, natural product, and you cork it, and it, has all that 2 years of age on it. This is almost going on 3 years now. It's got that beautiful, French kind of bready we say baguette on the label because we're fancy. Mm-hmm. But I'm not trying to trick anyone, but the thing is, I think if you were to have this on your bar or at your wedding and someone had it, or you had a toast or something at your party, it's a great stand-in just for champagne, and you don't have to think too much about it. You don't have to know it's cider. You don't have to know a ton about cider or what that means or what that doesn't mean.
You don't even need to like cider to
You don't even need
this.
to like cider. In fact, it's probably better. Here's the thing. This is now already going down the rabbit hole. it's better if you don't like cider.
Yeah.
Because the people who like cider now like Woodchuck or Angry Orchard, and no offense to those brands, but that's a sweetened product. It's something with flavors, and it's just kind of a different market.
Yeah, trash.
Your words, not mine.
You heard it here first. Trash.
Yeah, but if you like cider, then that's a problem. That's a hurdle that we have to hump.
Yeah.
Like, if you like sparkling wine.
Yeah, we make cider for a white wine audience.
No, I think that's a great...
At first, I mean, our entry point ciders, like, sometimes we talk about our ciders as like a gateway cider. You don't think you like cider? Well, try this, and we're going to draw you into this whole world. So this is the start of that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, this was one of my favorites from the first time we tasted it, and we just recently brought it in. And last week we had the pleasure of actually doing a pop-up with Kat and Rafa, who showed up to shuck some oysters. Nice job, buddy. Nice job.
The hard work.
They were beautiful. You did so well. But we did a little oyster and champagne pop-up last week, which we should probably do again because it got rained out. And I mean, we still sold 300 oysters that night, but I think we could do a lot more and enjoy the day even more. But part of the reason I wanted to do that pop-up is because I'd like to replace we don't have Prosecco on the menu at Cantina, but I always like to have something sparkling by the glass for that drinker. And I think there's absolutely no reason that in this region and at a restaurant like Cantina that we should be offering dry cava or sparkling wine from Italy or California, and we should be absolutely drinking this. So I wanted people to taste it and to recognize it, and this will be a great reason for all those coming in to say, you know what, I want to drink that. I want to have a glass of that champagne cider this week at Cantina and check out, see what it's all about. And I think it's a great, as you said, gateway, and gives you everything you want out of that glass of wine, but in a much better way.
It's you say farm to table, right? A lot. That's the old trope for a good restaurant when you have a destination. We're farm to glass. So we don't own farms. We're not orchard based ourselves, but our whole goal is working with local orchards around the Berkshires, each which bring their own character and their own style to what they're producing for us. We do a lot of forage fruit, things like that too. But in the Berkshires we don't really grow grapes. We don't really grow. We don't have a tradition of champagne making, but we certainly have a tradition of cider making that goes back hundreds of years. So I mean, apples really also come first to Massachusetts. So there's also that, even though some other states have taken over apple production, this is where they came first when they came over. So
cider's also half the alcohol of wine, so you can drink twice as much.
Hey,
so there's that.
That's good for both sides.
Not that I'm promoting over drinking. I'm just saying.
No, it's just about appropriately drinking.
Yeah. It's keeping the party going.
That's
right. It's very important.
Yeah, that's why I like to switch to Miller High Lifes at a certain point in life.
Exactly.
Another champagne.
Only
we're
until
we're the champagne of ciders, you might say.
Yes, way classier though. Come on, guys, go on. Let's not put you in that category. All right, so take me back a little bit. You mentioned real quick you had family here, but I know you guys are new. You're a COVID business, which I'm excited to hear about what that was like. Getting going. But start a little bit from the beginning and give a little bit of background on yourselves as people.
I'll take that one. You can
please do
jump in.
I'll keep drinking.
So my family has a house in the Berkshires. I think like a lot of people, yourself included. I grew up in New York City, but weekends, summers, any free time we had was always in the Berkshires. So it's been a place that I've loved for a super long time. I convinced this guy to also love it, hopefully not against his will.
Yeah.
And we got married up here about, as he said, 5 years ago, and just love it. I mean, everything from obviously the scenery to the arts and culture. It's just a place that I always come back to. So when we sort of fell in love with cider, and started making it as a hobby, first in our Brooklyn apartment, then in our basement in DC. We moved to DC for a little minute. Then in my parents' basement, it just kind of grew and grew as our love of dry cider in particular kind of grew and grew. So we're kind of a COVID business, but also kind of not. So take this journey with me. So we moved to DC in October of 2017, I got a job there. I worked in corporate sustainability for a long time, which took us down to DC. Matt was working part-time, and so getting more serious about cider making. It was like a big move for us to do that. Clearly, I loved it because March of 2019, we signed a lease up here to start a cidery. So,
which the story there is, so we're in this building called Greylock Works, which is like an old factory in North Adams. So much like Mass Mocha was an old, electronics factory and a couple other things along the way, or before that, converted art museum. There's a lot of old mills up there, and they've converted this, and we were put in touch with the folks who are running that, these architects out of New York, and they're doing a really nice job renovating it, so it looked beautiful. But the best part was, we were in DC. We didn't know how to buy a building in the Berkshires, even though we would come up here a lot. And so the opportunity was, here's a stall with a rental agreement, and it's 1,200 square feet, and all you have to do is sort of build it out and get started. And
that's
so
it. You just have to build it out.
Buy equipment, find apples.
That was it, yeah. But cider, unlike beer, really is interesting because it doesn't require like infrastructure. Like there's no heating. Like we don't boil the cider. We don't, brew cider. You literally just take apple juice and you're essentially putting it in vessels and then sort of guiding it along its journey.
Treating it.
You're treating it, yeah. But like there's not a heavy, it's sort of a big empty room, right? Like that's all it took. And so we knew we could do that at the small scale and make what we wanted. We weren't sure we could do it at a big scale, but this was like a nice stepping stone.
Sure.
Yeah.
And also fun. We're next to a distillery and a restaurant, so it kind of also had a destination.
We weren't then, though, because there was not a lot going on.
Yeah, it was
right
pretty
next
empty then.
But yeah, March 2019, we kind of, we put a business plan together really quickly, pitched it to our current landlords, and signed our lease, and then spent most of that year building out the space. You mostly, because I was working a full-time
Yeah,
job.
you went back a lot.
In DC.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we got very well acquainted with I-95.
Yep.
Yeah,
And that like
drive.
really charming drive.
And the
Yeah.
Taconic,
And you're like,
yeah.
ooh, a gas station. Let me pull off. You're like, wait, wasn't I just here 3
Yeah.
hours ago?
Yeah.
All the same.
Our dog got very familiar with that drive for the 7.5 hours. Yeah.
But then the whole goal was to build it out so that we could get sort of capture the harvest of 2019. So we do everything seasonally, meaning, apples are ripe in the fall. So we get apples or juice in from local orchards. So we start fermenting in the fall. Everything we do, slow fermentation. We love the cold. That really helps kind of slow the process down. And then we age everything. So we already had everything in the tanks.
We're sitting on thousands of gallons of cider.
Yeah.
Come, January, February 2020.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
It was
So I
made.
always-
We were blending. We had
Yeah.
a plan. And then we went up and we always say, like, we went up to paint a wall to start a tasting room, thinking we're going to open in May, have people come enjoy cider. And we literally never left that year. It was... We got shuffled around Airbnbs and hotel. At one point, we were in a hotel where they closed the hotel, but then they let us stay there for the week because they didn't want to kick us out. This is March 2020. So, and then immediately also that did change the business. So it is a COVID business in the sense that like there was no tasting room where frankly you're going to make your money anyway. Sort of, especially in that first year, invite people in, tell them the story, meet them face to face,
Get them to buy your product.
get them to buy your product, even know who you are. And then very quickly it became, okay, so we've got a window out the back that is this beautiful old factory brick window. The restaurant hadn't even opened at that time, so no one knew where you were. And we opened like July 4th, 2 years ago. And it was literally people would just drive in, hop out their car, go pick up a bottle and maybe buy a hat if we were lucky and, leave with cider. And for months, that was all we did, was sit in our little lawn chair behind this brick window, selling cider like it was off the back of a truck. And it was great. Honestly,
we sold
I loved it.
we sold a lot of
Could I have
cider.
gone back? That'd be great. I don't know. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But you didn't have restaurant accounts at that point? It was just like...
No, so our whole idea was that we were going to have this nice little tasting room. It was going to be open during the tourist season, July to October probably because
very seasonal.
you need the leaf peepers. We weren't really planning to do any kind of distribution, but then obviously COVID hit and we had all this cider and we sold as much of it as we could out the back window, literally. But then we got into wholesale way faster than I think we otherwise would have.
Which was a goal. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
dreams was like to be on a menu at a restaurant, especially compared to wine. I mean, to be not on a beer or cider list was critical to us. We want to be seen as a sparkling wine. But yeah, that wasn't the goal for the first year by any means.
I have you on my wine list.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
love that. We love that.
on
We
the
actually
wine list.
we debate that a lot with people about, should it be on the beer cider list? Should it be on the wine list? Also, we had an account too who was like, our ciders, we always recommend like an 8-ounce pour. It's like a wine, right? Something like that, or in type of glass. We had a couple accounts who were pouring, 12, 16-ounce pints. And we're like, why are you going through kegs so quickly? I mean, I don't mind it. I'm moving kegs, but I'm also going to run out. So, and then we realized, I was like, I don't know how you're making money on that, but you were doing it. So I don't know. It's funny. It's cider is in this world where, it's good and bad because no one really knows what it is. Right? Or we've certainly lost sense of what the traditional cider is. We've got a sense of what sort of, the commercial cider is, your sweetened kind of soda pop cider. And then I think there's a big question about like what the future is too. Like we're not a traditional cider either. We're not like trying to say this is the cider that is made how it was made 100 years ago only, or we don't use filters or anything like that. We want a nice clean product like you get out of any kind of quality wine. And so I think it's a little part of defining what the next 10 years, the next 20 years of cider making is.
Sure. So I have
fun.
a question, because as you're painting this picture of what this original studio looked like, studio is the wrong word, but production site, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And do you guys have a juice press there? And
We have a small little press. So
what is small though? Because
It's
relative.
technically, it's 90 liters
Yeah.
is how they're sized. And basically it presses about 15 gallons at a time. So not much. So
15 gallons of juice will come out of one.
One
pressing
pressing.
takes like a half hour. Basically, we can press when we're moving maybe 110 gallons a day.
And do you
like,
use
like 2 barrels?
like a mule or a donkey, or like what does this actually look like? Because I'm just seeing you two being like, sweetheart, what do you want for dinner tonight? Pushing this thing
bats,
around.
Yeah, battened down. No, we've got there's 2 components. There's a grinder and the press. It's funny too though. The grinder comes from this place over in, I guess it's technically Franklin County.
Yeah.
Or it's just east of here. And they are one of the biggest like orchard suppliers in the country. And so going back to that, like Massachusetts, I mean, it's amazing how much stuff is still like based here, how many nurseries are based here. But it was great when I picked up that grinder, which was of course just in the back of our RAV4. This is before we owned a truck, because we weren't, we were still Brooklyn.
You didn't know.
We didn't
That's
know
okay.
nothing.
we moved a lot in that little car.
My God. But I went there and I bought this thing, also thinking it would just be in stock. Because, me, I'm like, I'll just go to the store, I'll buy
It's
the
like
grinder.
Amazon. You just like order it.
I mean,
shows
he's like,
up.
normally these are like a 2-month wait, right? We build them to order. He's like, but you're lucky I've got one in the back. And as the guy's loading in, he's like, oh, wait, that's not right. So he goes up like the street to where he lives and he comes back down. I guess he like forgot his welding helmet or something and he's like in the back of the RAV4, like welding on a piece that was like kind of messed up. He's like, I'm going to fix that for you. And I'm just like, what the hell am I doing?
What are we doing?
Yeah, you never know in those moments. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing?
Yeah. And then also, I mean, that wasn't that piece of equipment. We've had a lot of equipment in the back of the RAV4 where like I'm driving and Kat's in the back holding on for dear life to the thing because of course we don't know how to strap anything down at that point. We're just idiots.
There was
total idiots.
2 particular times. One, we had to borrow this like, I don't know, 200-pound press.
Yeah.
Before we had our
or
own.
the first filter.
Filter. And I'm like turned around in the front seat, like holding on so it doesn't like fly out the back window.
And it's just silent. And the thing is, everything in the Berkshires is like an hour away, right? So it's like, it's not a 4-hour
windy.
drive where it would
Windy
be like,
roads.
then you'd stop, but it's just silent for like an hour. She's holding, I'm driving, radio's off.
Yeah.
You're just like,
You're waiting for a clink.
we're just gonna get it back and then we can like talk to each other again. So yeah, that first year was a journey.
Yeah.
So we have this very small press there though that we press stuff we forage or something like what we do with Hancock Shaker Village where we handpick their like heirloom apples. But a big thing, and this is the Berkshire Cider Project, our whole idea was, there's 5 or 6 orchards in Berkshire County. A lot of them, apple business is a hard business. Any farming business is hard. If we make a premium product, if we build it, they will come kind of thing. Can we use that as a way to generate business for these orchards that we love? Look, I mean, we're not going to save any orchard. We're not making really a dent in their overall budget, but can we help? And I think that's played out true a little bit. We do have an orchard partner where, I know they've bought some equipment because we were spending some money with them in the fall and it let them buy this other thing they needed. So I think there's a little truth to that. But that is where the project comes from, is we wanted to build a business that then would support a whole vertical chain of growing, equipment making. Frankly, the restaurants are part of that chain too, right?
They're the final.
Yeah, exactly.
The final, offering.
So
really, restaurants and retail. But I think that's so cool, and I'm, I don't know if we have enough time to go that deep into the true apple farming side, but I'm so curious, what does an apple yield as far as juice?
Yeah,
this is your math problem. You get asked all the time.
I thought you were the spreadsheet one. You don't have a metric for it?
He has this one.
There's the problem with that question, and if you talk to other cider makers, and if any of them listen, so Angry Orchard sort of created that question because about 10 years ago, they went on TV and they said there's 2 or 3 apples that are in every bottle Angry Orchard, which in the grand scheme of things is actually a very small amount of apples compared to what you really need. Long story short, it's a little complicated because apples, the apples we get are crab apples or small foraged apples. That makes really good cider. So a big, Granny Smith or a Gala apple you get from the orchard is a little bit different. But it takes about, out of a bushel of apples, which is about 40 pounds of apples, 45 pounds of apples, you get.
You got to have metrics
you have
outside of what a normal person would, or
so
what
a bushel is like a big, basket.
Your standard big basket.
I don't know.
You go picking and you get a big bag. How many of those? 6?
So
10?
those are all quarters. Yeah, it'd be 5 of those or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
40
I
pounds,
really should know more.
40 pounds, 5 of those.
40 pounds of those. You get 4 or 5 gallons out of that. Usually a little less depending on if we're using crab apples, things like that.
We'll put a picture of a bushel just to show.
Yeah, yeah. Please just drop
There
it
you go.
in.
It's right there. Boom.
For scale.
That's a bushel.
But then, so it really does depend, though, on what the quality of the apples are. Because we pressed little crab apples that are this big.
Wait, crab apples?
Oh, please.
We love crab apples.
I got crab apples on the property.
Yeah.
Bring them.
So that's the thing about cider. Big picture here, right? You don't expect your red wine, to taste like Welch's grape juice, right? So we don't use table grapes to make wine. We use Pinot Noir. We use all this stuff, and those taste terrible, right? They're terrible grapes to eat. They have, they're all seeded too. So the apples that make good cider aren't great apples. They're not commercial apples. They're not the apples you go pick your own.
Apples, yeah.
Culinary apples, eating apples. So we want all of these apples to have tannins and acids. It's just like grapes. So you want crab apples are full of them, but you even have all these traditional varieties that are full of them too. They tend to be much smaller. There is this story, this is kind of cider making lore as well, about and some of it's true, but prohibition comes along, right? Ruins the beer industry, ruins a couple of things. And that's when cider really peters off in the country. A lot of people say, well, that's because they went through and they cut down all the cider apple trees, the apples that were grown only for cider making. And some of that's true. There are photos, there are good stories about where they cut down those orchards or people cut them down. The real story there is that cider making in general was already on decline as we became more urban and more city-based. You can't make good cider in a city because you just don't have access to the fruit, whereas you can put wheat and hops and barley and all that stuff on a train. It comes in. So beer takes off then, and that's really what killed it. But it is part of the decline where we ripped out these apples. So, even apples like Baldwin, which was a huge one around here, is a good cider-making apple. But, our champagne here, I'm just reading off the back. We've got Dabinette. We've got Rhode Island Greening. And then we've got Golden Russet, which is sort of an in-between. It's an apple, you might know. It's a little bit of a culinary apple. And then we do have some Ida Red and some Rome, which we grow here as culinary apples. So it's a nice little balance. But yeah, a handful of crab apples in a gallon of cider makes a huge difference. So that's why we also do. How's this for a segue?
Yeah, thank you.
We do this, what we call our community cider project. So this really ties into the window, where we were selling cider out this window, and then people would come along. And this was COVID, so everyone was desperate for like a human connection, right? And they would be like, I have apples in my car. And then the pregnant pause, like, oh, okay.
Please take them.
Heard.
But there's being like, can you do something with these? And then we said, well, maybe we can. We knew we wanted to forage. We were already foraging a little bit, doing some things at Hancock Shaker Village, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But we weren't getting enough. And so then it became this thing, okay, we put out a sign that said, we want your apples. And we put it on the website, we put it on the Instagram. And then people started bringing us bushels of apples. And then one day, people brought us like a wheelbarrow and then a whole trunk full. And then said, if you come to my house, you can have twice as much. Because turns out Berkshire County, everyone's got apples.
Yeah.
And everyone lives on like an old orchard or old orchard estate or something like that, old farm. So that first year we got literally a ton of apples. That's 2,000 pounds for those of you following along. And we pressed them and we made what we call our community cider project. So that is the idea of like forage apples, donated apples. The label is all photos of the actual apples, and you can see it's like such a range of size and color and shape. And they're ugly. I mean, people, we can pick them off the ground, all that kind of stuff, because the fermentation process is great. And what you taste in this cider, it's actually our most apple-y. It's our most like kind of friendly cider because it's got the most acid, because it's got all those tannins. It just, if we could only make this cider, I would. We only make 3 barrels of it every year, but
What's 3 barrels?
so three.
No, I'm just trying to
No,
create
you're
a
right.
full
So beer
vision.
barrels are a little different. So our barrel's a wine barrel, so it's 55 gallons. So it's
Each.
like 160 gallons basically, which is nothing.
No.
Even for a small cider, it's just nothing.
But backing up just a little bit too. So the community cider partially came from people literally like, especially during COVID, like wanting to be part of something, being like, I'm in my yard picking all these apples and I can't make any more pies. But it's also,
We never got any pies though.
we got applesauce.
Oh, that's true. That was good.
We did get some applesauce. But as we started, we also, I think, came into this project with, I don't know, maybe hubris, or I don't know what you would call it. Healthy dose of hubris. But thinking we would go to these orchards and say, hey, like, I want to buy 600 gallons of your finest cider next week and you'll deliver it to me and it'll be great. And the thing that we have really learned, which should have been obvious and is probably obvious to you as a chef, is farmers don't have a lot of excess. Like, if you're a farmer, you're like using all of the things that you grow. You're not just like sitting on a bunch of produce, like hoping someone will come along and buy it from you.
Labor included.
Yeah.
There's not your press guy just sitting on his hands waiting to press me apples.
Sure.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of very generous and wonderful partners who are willing to partner with us and do want to be a part of what we're doing. But we're a little bit at the mercy of what they grow and what they're willing to press that time, etc. So part of also the community project and our Hancock Shaker Village cider was like, where else can we find really interesting apples that are out there? Wild apples, heirloom apples. They're probably not coming from a lot of these orchards, which are pick your own focused, which is a great business.
Yeah, I was going to say the pick your own and the high end or the normalized apple lineup that we all have come to know. I don't eat apples, but
you just drink them.
That's a topic for another day. But
what?
yeah, I'm a fruitophobic.
Fruit in general?
Yeah, fruit in general, I'm afraid of, which is strange because I do love cider and I even sometimes dabble in a little apple juice.
Oh, okay. This is public information. It's dangerous.
Rafa, back us up 15
Every
seconds. I'm a rude but you're right. That's a economics
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're a farmer, you're not like, oh, my dream is to have a pick your own operation where we only grow IPA essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
Right.
Every brewery hates making IPA, right? That's not what they want to be doing.
Yeah.
They want to be doing the thing that they want to be doing.
Yeah.
And typically growing the Honey Crisp
Yeah.
for somebody else to pick is not it. But you know what?
That's what
It's a
makes
great
the
apple.
money.
That
I will
works.
say, it is, the culinary apples, eating apples are tasty if you're not, scared of them.
But that is
I won't pull it. I'll leave it in the bag.
Fuck off.
But we're more lucky. I mean, you go over to New York State, Washington State. I mean, it's like one apple. Like you're looking at like acres of Macintosh or Red Delicious. Here, I mean, you can go up the road to Windy Hill, which we make a Windy Hill cider. I mean, we're lucky. He's got Mutsu and McCowan, and he does have some Baldwins. Like we actually get a little more diversity than most.
yeah.
And most people, frankly, are buying in from China. I mean, you get like fruit juice concentrate nowadays, and that's what usually your cider. If you're buying a cider that's on draft and in the grocery store, a large portion of that is going to be some kind of concentrated juice from either Washington State or China or something like that. And there's, again, it's a little bit of a different product. I'm not going to say that's right or wrong, but it's not what we make.
But it's been
I've derailed your story.
No.
Yeah, sorry.
But I was trying to talk about also like the learning process of like agriculture in the Berkshires.
Yeah.
And what sustains farms and how maybe that's different from what we thought it was or what we want it to be. So again, we're looking for certain varieties of cider apples that in some ways we assumed would be grown here, or we assumed that farmers would be like super excited about partnering with us. They have their own business model. They're excited to partner with us. But I think our next phase of growth will be putting trees in the ground or partnering with an orchard to graft on the varieties that we really want, because we are essentially bringing a new type of demand to the market that didn't exist before. So we're not the, parents and kids and whoever wanting to pick apples in the fall, which again is a great business and does make a lot of money. But, it's a different thing. And like literally orchards look different if you're growing them for pick your own versus commercial.
So what is
Yeah.
Timing's different.
5 years
Labor's
from
different.
5 years from now? What is like the most streamlined, best for your business, both from an economic standpoint, but also from a quality and taste standpoint? Like, what does that look like? Is it you have your own operation, or are you being given fruit from like the pickings that you want?
Yeah.
I think we still, I mean,
You're going to get two different, hopefully
Yeah.
you're not going to get two different answers
yeah,
actually.
this feels like this is therapy now. This is
All
dangerous.
right, Kat, close your ears real quick, and we'll do
Yeah,
this
you
blind.
need like an isolation booth.
Matt's like, I don't even fucking like cider. Get me out of here.
I like making IPAs. Let's go. We are not grower. I mean, I'm not a farmer. We are not in the orchard business. There might be a partnership. There might be ways to do that smartly, but
That's the correct answer.
yeah, it's a different business altogether. I think the best case scenario is working with some of the orchards here and doing what Kat was just saying, where it's called top working, because apple trees are grafted. So if you want a different variety, you just chop them off and put your new grafts on, and you get that new apple variety in 5 years, something like that. But convincing them
Pause
to do that.
real
Yeah.
quick, because I've seen videos of this, so I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But essentially, imagine you cut a limb
Yeah.
off of a tree, right?
Yeah. Well, let's start even farther back than that. Actually.
Because this is it's a fascinating concept.
yeah.
We
So,
can just graze over
Let's
it.
start way back at Apple 101. So apples don't grow true to seed. So every Granny Smith tree you've ever seen didn't grow from a seed. It's just like people, right? If you put two strands of DNA together, you don't come out with a carbon copy of mom or dad or whoever.
No, you get some new monster.
You get some new model. So unlike, lots of plants, if you plant it, it'll grow exactly what it is. So every Macintosh tree, Granny Smith, whatever, will start with a rootstock which is literally like the trunk of the tree and the roots and a bunch of branches, whatever it is. And then if you want a Granny Smith, you, this is not, I mean, again, I'm not a farmer, but you chop off the branches and then you take a branch from a Granny Smith tree and you graft it on. Essentially, you fuse the two together.
Yeah,
Yep.
sort of like peeling back
Just
the
like
bark
that.
a little bit. It's a little bit of like a Z graft.
And then you grow from that branch the apple that you want.
Similar for all fruit.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of fruit is like that in general.
But
fruit
that's also
trees-
why you have like our community cider. That's why it's so interesting, because those are wild apples. Who knows what they are? They've grown from seeds from who knows where.
Yeah. Apples will grow from seed. So if
Yeah,
you,
yes.
and this is the thing. So like cows, you know, you go to Shaker Village or any farm around here, cows eat apples and then they deposit them usually along the hedgerow because that's where they don't get mowed or whatever, eaten down. And that's where you see all these baby trees and you can see them right away. If they survive, if they're hardy, and this is where you kind of get into this conversation about climate change and, you know, what are new varieties that might come out that are going to be hardier. It's going to work as our temperature changes, as our seasons changes, but also you select them for taste. So we just planted some trees over at Arrowhead, which is Herman Melville's estate. But as we prepared the field for planting trees there, we left a lot of these wild apple trees that were just naturally there. We flagged them all in hopes that maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of them turn out to be incredible apples for cider, for eating or whatever. And then we'll take some cyan wood from those and graft them in.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we'll, name them Josh. I don't know.
To answer your question, though,
Crazy.
and luckily we have the same answer, which is that ideally we will partner with an orchard and be able to top work a bunch of trees and grow an orchard of cider specific apples. But also, sparked by our Hancock Shaker Village cider and now this orchard that we're planning at Arrowhead, my dream,
Yeah.
because this is one thing that I love about the Berkshires, is to have like a distributed like cultural orchard at sites like the Mount and Tanglewood and all these beautiful cultural institutions that have so much land and frankly already have apple trees. Like bring that like arts and culture and agriculture of the Berkshires together and then literally like put it in a glass for people to enjoy at these places.
And
Yeah.
in that vision, do you see all of these as site specific? Of like, our lineup is not IPA, Pilsner this, but our lineup this year is Tanglewood,
Maybe.
Cantina, and like we have this one we only did 10 cases of. This
Yeah.
one we were able to do 50 cases of. This one we were able to do 100.
Maybe, or it could be, you know, we're going to plant golden russet trees at 5 different locations and blend those all together and
Oh, yeah,
see
cool.
how the different growing conditions impact
Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
it's
I
also
think
a little bit
it's both.
selfish because, you know, there's a lot of like fire blight and stuff that happens to trees. So if we like put them in different places, our whole orchard won't get destroyed all at once.
Well,
Yeah.
being smart never hurts.
Yeah. But I just love, I mean, again, like the things that I love about the Berkshires, the landscape, the arts and culture, the opportunities for people to come together to enjoy all of them. So like, that's literally what we're trying to do
What
with this.
what a story in a glass right now.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I
great.
keep it's literally looking right in front of me, and
You're
I really
staring at the
want to.
apples.
I'm staring at apples, and it makes me think of Dan Barber's Wasted program. I don't know if you guys were in tune to that of like, look, there's something good in everything, and you were not afraid to show that, quite literally on the
Yeah.
label, and I think that's a really cool one. And if just because I know there will be a couple of people that listen to this podcast, if somebody is listening to this is like, holy shit, I have apples, I want to
That's-
give them to these people, what's the best way to get in touch?
So our website has info, and we're going to be updating that soon for this fall. We usually start taking apples mid-September as they get kind of ripe. We really love to take them later. Cider apples want to kind of hang on the tree and get really, really ripe, because mostly then you're developing the sugars. If you pick them too early, or if they drop too early, they don't have a lot of sugar. That's what makes the alcohol. That's what we're here for.
in half the amount.
Yeah, in little splits. But what's great about that program too is we've done this now twice, and we're going to continue and kind of expand on this. If you bring your apples, you know, if you bring a bushel or whatever we consider a bushel to be at the time being, I suppose, you get a token, and then you get to come back. And if you bring a lot, you get bottles in the spring. If you bring one, you get 1 or 2 bottles and a gift or something like that. So we just had this party because we just released this like a week ago, and 8 or 9 people came back on a Sunday at Greylock Works to taste the cider, drinking with their friends, bringing their families around, and walk out with their little bags of
That's amazing.
their apples. And we want to expand that as much as possible.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's really fun. And maybe it also kind of diverges into multiple strands. Maybe there is like these are different styles. Right now, this is a kitchen sink, but that could change as we kind of develop a little more specific.
But I think the kitchen sink is fun because it lets you put out vintages and and like, why was 2019 different than 2020?
Oh man,
because of the apples.
Talking language.
That's just what it was, and we don't even know to a certain extent.
Well, two nailed it. One is this is a bad apple year. So apples are also biennial. So they like to kind of produce heavy one year and produce nothing the following year. And it's part of their self-preservation, energy, that kind of stuff, bud development. So this year we're really struggling to see apples. We see them in some places. It's very micro. So it's not just like all Berkshire County's empty. It might be, this town was kind of had a late frost or something, so it took a little longer. So we are going to be struggling for apples this year. So that's what we need. But the other thing, and this is one little like cider 101, unlike wine, the best cider is always a blend. We're going to do some single varieties. We have some single varieties coming up in the tasting room just out of interest, and we had a couple kegs of them. But the best cider is always a blend. I mean, there's just no way around it. There's never, wine is all about, this is our one kind of king grape. This is what you do. This is how Chardonnay is. This is how Pinot is, or whatever. That's just, I don't think, fundamentally true of cider. So, which is fun because it always lets you play with the balance. And it always becomes a question of how are you putting these puzzle pieces together.
Do you do any single fruited stuff?
Not right now, but like I said, we're going to have a Spitz. So Isopa Spitzenberg is a very famous apple that started in New York State. We're going to have a couple kegs of that soon.
Baking apple, right?
Good baking apple. Big Thomas Jefferson apple for all you Thomas Jefferson fans out there.
Yay.
Complicated.
Thomas Jefferson's cider maker was a female enslaved woman.
Yeah.
Just
All right.
Very
putting
important.
that out there.
All right.
That's the important thing to remember. Yeah, that's the other funny thing about cider is I definitely got into cider. There's a little bit of Americana about it. I mean, there certainly is because it is a big part of our history. But for a long time, the story was like, well, your founding fathers. This was Benjamin Franklin. This was TJ's like favorite, apple, not Tijuana, but TJ.
Yeah.
And I think we're finally seeing a little more complicating that history in the right way, and as we are in society in general. But like, yeah, there was for a long time, cider was this thing that was kind of about like, the 1800s, this heritage, right, was the word. And I think now we're really trying to be more forward thinking, while also realizing how much, input in the past was led. I mean, look, cider apples for a long time and apples and cider making generally were part of the household. So naturally, it would have been led by women in the household, and in larger areas, obviously by enslaved people. So, that's part of the history. So I think, relying too much on like the idea of heritage.
Yeah, Thomas
cider
Jefferson was
is
not
complicated.
like pressing his own apples.
He wasn't.
Can we open this up? I don't know how much
One of
more
my-
cider we
one
want to
of
drink,
my-
but
Which
One of
You
my
wanna drink
favorite
all of
monuments
them.
actually is the Thomas Jefferson. But Kat, I have a question for you while
Yeah.
we crack open the next one. So we are now sitting together on the, what are they calling us? The council or the re-scheming committee? I don't know. There's so many names for these things. But Kat and I ran into each other at a Berkshire Grown event, and we were asked to join the group to help me out here. The
communications committee.
No, but pre the comm committee, like the entire group
like
was
Board.
strategic development
Yeah.
or strategic direction for Berkshire Grown.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, as I don't mean to call you a newcomer here in this town, but so quickly to be hopping into a great organization like Berkshire Grown, and to have in our Zoom meetings and personal meetings such a care and attention to that, where that kind of, why? Because as a new business owner, I always gave the excuse that I'm too fucking busy right now. Like I'm all on board, but no, and you seem to keep showing up, which is amazing. And I'm curious, like, where that comes from, just to talk a little bit about Berkshire Grown and your involvement with the community development stuff that we got going on.
Yeah. Well, first I'll just say this is our sour quint cider, which is probably my favorite. Made largely because my parents have had 2 quince trees in their backyard for about 40 years that no one has ever done anything with. So we made this cider with it, which is
So fucking awesome.
very delicious.
So
It's a little
awesome.
bit of everything. It's
Yeah.
like floral, perfumey, vegetal,
Funky.
a little funky.
Funky. Good.
Really great with food. I mean, this with cheese is totally different than even by the glass.
Yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question, I mean, part of it is I can't help myself. I see like a good cause and I want to be part of it. But I mean, so I've been around the Berkshire since I was a kid. I love it very dearly here. I truly think when we were planning our wedding, I got to know the Berkshires in a different way. We had our rehearsal dinner at Cricket Creek and I got to know them really well. And frankly, to sort of see a little bit, that gave me my first glimpse into what it means to like run an agricultural business in the Berkshires. And they make an incredible product and they work so hard. And then starting this business, and again, like we rely on farms and farming in this region. We're not farmers. We don't, by and large, grow our own trees. We planted a couple over at Greylock Works, but that's not going to make a lot of cider. And starting to understand like the economics and really the reality of what farming means in the Berkshires is so interesting to me. It's so personal. As soon as you start like stepping into that world, you start like knowing, and not in like a cutesy, like I go to the farmer's market and I know my farmer, but like
No, the players.
you get to know people like so personally, and it's hard. I mean, farming in the Berkshires is a specific thing. It's not the Hudson Valley. It's not the Pioneer Valley. It's not, I said this today, it's not, the Midwest. Like it is a very specific thing. Small scale farmers, really expensive land, very like discerning customer base. And I think there's some incredible things coming out of the Berkshires, but I don't think there's enough. Again, I grew up here and it was only 5 years ago that I really started to understand what was happening here in terms of farming.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is people like putting a lot of love and passion and money and sweat and
More sweat.
into this thing. And it's also like part of what makes the Berkshires. And so if we don't have that, I think it's a real loss. So I jumped at the chance when I was asked to join that. And I think that's a big part of our mission too, is like highlighting what it means to make food and make food products in the Berkshires. We could, I mean, again, as Matt said, like we could get apple juice out of China any day of the week, but we choose to source locally because, I mean, A, it's in our name, and B, it's like part of our mission. We love it here and we want to make something that literally celebrates being in the Berkshires. So
Yeah, and gives it a purpose. And
Yeah.
in today's meeting, Kat and I we actually joined up on the communications subcommittee, and we're talking about what's the biggest thing we want people to capture from the website. And what it came down to is location, is really making sure people feel like they're in the Berkshires. The second they get to that page, the second they start exploring that page, they know where they are, because there's so much farming happening. And we have a very, as you said, unique and special farming community that is not widespread and massive. It is so personal. And I so often, part of the reason I'm still doing what I'm doing is because of that feedback of getting from the customer, from your end participant in what you do, the celebration, the excitement about that. And that keeps me going more than the well, I want to say red, but the money or whatever money happens to trickle into the bank account at the end of the day comes, and I know that the farmers don't exactly get that same celebration. Or even Emily, I go home and I'm in a good mood after working a shift, and that's because I had that reinforcement of somebody saying thank you.
Yeah.
Like, you work so hard, and I'm doing a better. I enjoyed myself because of that. I think the farmers get a little, I don't want to say overlooked, because we do a relatively good job celebrating them, but to have someone like you step in and introduce yourself and become a community member in that circle, saying, my goal is to create a business off of that showcases your hard work in a different way. You guys are a value-added product, right? You take apples, whether they're good apples or
Weird
ugly
apples,
bruised apples.
Takes all kinds.
and making something that somebody can simply digest, no pun intended. It's understandable. We took this guy's apples, this girl's apples, and whatnot. And I think that's a great premise, and I always like to just shed the utmost appreciation to those that create businesses out of that context. In fact, a quick side story. My dad said that he met Malcolm Gladwell at a benefit dinner or something, and he really wanted to come up with a good question to ask him. He wanted to say something to him. He didn't know what it would be.
Oh boy.
So he went up to Malcolm, and he said, I'm a big fan of your work, but I got one question for you. Do you start with a premise and then develop or a question and kind of figure out the answer to it? Or do you start with the answer and work backwards and kind of figure out everything that came before it to get there? And his answer was yes.
That's a good answer.
Right? Which is awesome. And I think that what your business model and why I'm so excited about what you guys are doing is it does exactly that. And it says, I found a passion making cider, but my business is going to be starting with my product and going backwards and exploring not what can I do with it, because I figured that part out.
Yeah.
But what can I do with something great that somebody else did to highlight it, to support them, the partnerships, the collaborations, the fact that you have on the couple of places that I've had some ciders from with you, and showcasing those businesses. And you guys do an amazing job. Your brand is fantastic and it looks so fucking cool. And
Yeah,
it's
that's
so
fun
inviting.
too. I do it in-house, which is fun. It's another way to kind of stretch the creativity muscles.
So
But I also, sorry.
moment of bravo.
Thank you.
Because
I'll take it. Yeah,
because
I'll take it.
I do truly think that we need more businesses that are not just about the bottom line, but truly looking at how can we make an impact in a community with our skill set.
Yeah.
And you guys have done just that. So thank you.
Well, I mean, I would point that right back at you, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, no, but like, I think, again, I grew up a lot of my time in Lenox as a kid, going to Tanglewood, doing all the like Berkshire things, which I love. I continue to love. But what's really exciting to me is things like Cantina, things like Prairie Whale, like all of these, like, I don't know, businesses that feel like they are bringing a renewed energy to the Berkshires. And like the fact that businesses like that exist is why we felt like we could offer this product here.
Yeah. It's also special
Because I would have said 10 years ago, there's no way. Like, it's that's not the Berkshires that, I don't know, it would have been like, I guess we got to go to like the Hudson Valley or whatever.
Yeah, or
but,
it's too fancy, or people won't show up. Yeah.
But now I feel like there is a place for this kind of thing. There's a community for it.
We also, I mean, Berkshire's, like a lot of places in, upstate New York, or certainly Long Island. I mean, if you're sort of regional to Boston or New York, as we are, it's seasonal. It's definitely a tourist business. You're picking up in people who either are coming here on a vacation, or they've been coming here for 40 years with their families. I mean, and that's always a balance in these towns, right? It's your town, your locals, who we also are deeply connected to because of projects like the Community Cider. But we also love folks who, like, now for 3 years or 2 years now, have come from Boston. They're like, oh yeah, right. Now we always stop at Berkshire Cider Project.
Yeah.
Like that, we're now part of somebody's experience of what it means to be here. In the same way that I feel like you are all the time too. I mean, you have people who are like, well, we're in Great Barrington for the weekend, as we always do over, this weekend in August with my family, and we go to Cantina 2 times, and we do this, and that's great, and that's important. I grew up in upstate New York, where the Finger Lakes region, when I was growing up, was just getting kind of started, and I don't know too much about it because I was a little further east of there, but the wine industry there for a hot second was like kind of looked down on, and now is really kind of coming to its own. And I think people are finally starting to realize it's okay. It's okay to be a destination. It's okay to be that thing that caters to that tourist, and it's almost not even tourism. It's just people enjoying these beautiful places. I mean, we used to live in a big city. Lots of people live in, other areas, and they want to they spend their time and their vacation as they want. And there's no reason that we can't cater to that and be that special thing. And that all kind of comes back to like a business decision of like, we're not in the Hudson Valley. We're not in Vermont. We're not outside
I love
Berkshire
the Hudson
County,
Valley,
really.
by the way. I feel like
Yeah.
we're talking
No, it's fantastic. But it's, we want to be that special thing that when you come to Berkshire County, you get a Berkshire cider. And maybe you aren't going to get it in New York, or maybe you can't, mostly because we don't have a lot of time on our hands, ship it right now. That is something we'd like to change. But shipping cider, like we want to
direct to consumer.
Direct to consumer. We'd like to do maybe a cider club in the future, but mostly out of that same mentality of like, okay, so you spend maybe some time in your summer in the Berkshires, so when Thanksgiving comes around, why don't you like Berkshire cider on your Thanksgiving table?
Yes,
and
please.
we can do a special deal and ship it out to you. So that, but it's really, it isn't about it being available to you all the time. It still is that special thing that reminds you of this place where you probably have a lot of special memories. Maybe you got married there. Maybe your family spent some time there.
I like that idea.
Yeah. So
putting Berkshires on the map.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the right places, not as like a everything all the time. Like, but if I got if I didn't live around here and I was familiar with you guys, and I got an email saying, "Hey, Thanksgiving's around the corner," and to all of our members, we're offering, 4-pack cases shipped for Thanksgiving. Orders must be in by this date. Blah blah blah. It comes with 2 different ciders, both that we think will work with the table.
Yep.
Because guess what? We know exactly what you're making for Thanksgiving this year.
Not much diversity there.
Yeah, what goes good with Sprite fried turkey?
Yeah. Marshmallow, yams, right? We'll come up with that.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's great. Honestly, and I just can't overstate it enough, because we were professionals. We sat behind desks for a long time, and those were rewarding jobs. But there's nothing like in our tasting room after you've been working 6 days a week. Maybe I was there at 3 a.m. the night before filtering a cider, trying to get it ready for the weekend or something like that, or fighting with some machine. And then you're up the next day and you have to open and you have to put on the friendly face for your tasting room. But then someone comes in and they say, hey, we're from Boston. This is the weekend we're here. And we drove here the minute you opened to buy our case of cider that we bring back with us and have for the next couple months. You melt.
More of a pick me up than any cup of
amazing.
coffee or cocaine.
I can't trade it for the world. Yeah, I'll take both, but that's
And it's just the 2 of you now?
Not quite. So we
it's a great story.
just hired our first full-time employee,
Yeah.
assistant cider maker, and then we have another assistant cider maker who comes 1 to 2 days a week from Northampton.
And also does some deliveries out there.
So if
you're in
there.
Northampton,
Provisions. What's up?
Dirty Truth. Yeah,
Yep.
I love them.
And then we also will be hiring in the fall for harvest and production. So if anyone wants to come pick apples,
10 bar.
10 bar.
Give me a day off.
But yeah, we have our first full-time employee, which is amazing. Feels really rewarding too.
Yeah.
That's also the thing. You know this, but like building a business where you can employ someone for, a relatively good wage who takes on your mission as their own. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
It's really incredible.
I just bought a book that I'll share with you guys when I'm done with it, but it's called Culture. And actually, Rafa, you were there, right? It was
Yeah.
the night of the cider event that we did. Rafa was leaving, and I walked into his car, and as I was saying goodnight to him, some guy comes up to me and goes, "Excuse me, are you the owner?" I said, "Oh, God."
You're like, depends.
Oh, God. Yes, I am. And he was like, "I just wanted to let you know that I had the most amazing meal here tonight, and your host, Jeff, took the utmost care of us.
It's amazing.
And I now know everything I need to know about you from my experience with Jeff."
Amazing.
And that hit me so hard. Like, that made me so fucking happy.
It hit you so hard that you even asked him to give you a massage after.
Yeah. I said, "What do you do?" He goes, "I'm a massage therapist." And I turned,
buried the
I turned to him, and the next 5 minutes of our conversation were fantastic. I was like, and I knew he was a good one too, because as soon as he touched my back, he was like, "Oh, good God." I was like, "You got a lot of stress."
Like, I'm going to be here for a minute.
Yeah. But he said he had just finished reading this book called Culture.
Oh, nice.
And he has his own business separate from his masseuse or physical therapy business. And he said that is really his main focus right now, is how do you create a culture that allows it to transcend the intensity and the love that you both share. And you guys are on the beginning of that journey right now.
Yeah.
And it's a practice of hiring. It's a practice of implementing. It's a practice of letting go a little bit. And my man Danny Meyer has one of my favorite sayings of all time: constant gentle pressure. Constant gentle pressure, always.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we all as business owners should be looking towards, as far as how do we continue to create culture, because you guys are great, and the building that I bought in New Marlboro is great, but how do we make sure that it's going to continue to be great as we grow?
Because you can't do everything yourself, too. I mean, like, that's the goal, right? Is that you're not doing everything with your own two hands every minute of every day. Like, you need other people to buy into it, bring their own ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to be seduced by that, like, sense of, oh, I did all this too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think we felt that. Like, it's easy to be seduced to say, like, oh, I bottled 1,200 bottles yesterday myself.
Yeah.
And I labeled them myself. And, at the end of the day, that ain't as impressive if I can say,
I taught someone.
someone how to bottle. And
so then I can go do this other stuff
Right.
that actually makes us more money.
And then they taught someone else how to bottle or how to blend or do something. Like, and that was probably the best thing I've learned, actually, is to not be so focused on what I can do, but be focused on, like, what I'm enabling other people to do. And as long as it's also then focused on the value in the product, that's the dream.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a lesson, we knew we'd learn some lessons, but that's not a lesson, you went in thinking you'd figure out. It just kinda
I'm
comes.
gonna be a good teacher.
Yeah, right.
Said nobody ever.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the public school teachers.
Truly.
You're doing a great job, and we truly appreciate all of your help.
Yeah.
Especially me and Rafa with our children. But
That is correct.
Yeah, 3 years in now, we've learned more than I ever thought you could learn. I mean, my respect for small business owners, little husband-wife owners too. I mean, it's both rewarding and challenging to work with a partner. It's the
We
best.
still like each other.
Yeah, so we still like each other.
I know. Rafa, can you just put Emily in here so I can give her a quiz real quick?
Give her a quince.
I totally agree. There's so much joy that comes out of it, but it's also something that most relationships should not have to go through, because that's a battle, day in and day out, that consumes you.
Yeah.
And
it's constant. I mean, you still work at it, and as things change, as other employees come into, as the business change, I suppose, that relationship changes too, in terms of your relationship to the business and how you interact with it. Mm-hmm. But, we keep taking on bigger projects, and so it goes from there. Yeah, can't help ourselves. So we are hoping to expand this year. So we're hoping to grow and be able to produce more cider. But, we still want to be this regional sort of focus. And
Who
come
designed
visit
your
us.
labels? Those are super cool. And
Yeah, say more
super
about it.
thought-
He would really like you to say more. Thank you. So I do all our labels. So I'm a theater designer, quasi-architect by trade. I did a lot of graphic work because basically I had to pay rent in my 20s. I'm not the fastest graphic designer, as my wife will tell you, so it always takes a little while to get the right labels on order and not have to pay for overnight shipping.
A lot of rush fees.
But the story there is also, it's a little deliberate. So 2 things. One, cider, for a lot of good reasons, often has a little bit of a farmy vibe to it, a little bit of, and cider in general also tends to have like a little haze, or like the cider itself is a little rough or a little vinegary, and that's great. And we drink a lot of that stuff all the time, but we knew we needed to be this kind of like entry point cider, those clean, crisp, and that translates to the design too. So we wanted a really modern, fresh design that felt like it fit with modern natural wines and anything trendy. But we're also down the road from Mass Mocha. So that's the big draw. People come to North Adams, where our tasting room is, where we're based in production, to go to Mass Mocha. And so a lot of our labels are inspired by, directly by artists there. So we have a label for our pet nat that has a circle cut out, and it's a James Turrell, ripoff. And it's like I'm Drake, basically, right? I'm just doing a James Turrell.
Can't you tell?
I'm Drake of the cider world. I'm calling it now. If you don't call your own shot, come on.
They used to call me while I was making cider. Late night when I'm filtering.
Well, Kat also grew up in Toronto, so we're looped in here.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got that. The champagne label is based on this graffiti artist who I really like. Our Windy Hill is based on like a Solowit. He's Mass Mocha has a bunch of Solowits there. Yeah. So we're trying to keep that kind of going. We're also, for the first time, there's a hotel in North Adams called Taurus. Really, really wonderful boutique hotel. We made a cider from their apples this year, and they are going to design the label.
That's so funny.
So it's the first one we're letting go.
This is the 4th episode, at least third episode in a row that we give a shout out to tourists.
Oh,
yeah,
well, this is how you get the sponsorship money.
Yeah, damn right.
Maybe they'll give you a cocktail when you go up there.
Check.
Yeah, exactly.
My next question was actually about North Adams, because we typically do this at night, and it's hard to get people down here from North County. And I'm curious, for those, you said you spent time in Lenox as a kid. What brought you to North Adams specifically? And also give us a little bit of update on what's going on up there, because so many people, especially down here in South County, only really know North Adams as Mass Mocha.
Well, that is probably what brought us there in the first place.
Okay.
Because I love Mass Mocha, and it's just the best. And we got married there, so I love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I fell in love with North Adams. There's so much cool stuff going on. So Chingon, who does tacos at your Monday and Tuesday taco nights.
Chingon?
Justin and Mariah are the absolute best. They started their taco truck in the Mass Mocha courtyard right next to Bright Ideas, which is another great spot. Taurus has really changed the game, I think, in North Adams. Great cocktails, go to the airport rooms.
The best.
We also love the old school spots like the Golden Eagle up on the Hairpin Turn. Get a great view. Get a Manhattan jukebox, Kino.
Yeah.
Awesome. We've also been supported literally from day one by Meze, which is technically in Williamstown, but we'll include them on this list.
Definitely.
Just still continue. I feel like there's a kindred spirit in terms of approach to menu and food.
Definitely.
But North Adams, it is kind of a place of opportunity where, you have people who grew up there and they're seeing what Mass Mocha did and how they're changing it. And maybe they're part of that, or they're just happy that their town has this new thing happening after it kind of took some hard years. And then, MCLA is up there, which is the school, which is the college. And a lot of those kids stay there afterwards and have started a small business, or frankly bought real estate that, is really undervalued and have upped it, and maybe they're renting it, or maybe they're just converting it for their own house and they're starting businesses.
They work for us too.
Yeah, a lot of times they work for us, and they need to pick, there's lots of artists up there, lots of musicians. It's kind of got this great community right now, which I would also say, and so we're a woman-owned business. So Kat is, really running the business. She is the mastermind behind how this even functions.
All the spreadsheets.
I sort of stumble along figuring out what tastes right.
Yeah, and spend 3 weeks working on a label.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome,
right.
it looks good.
Only to spend hundreds of dollars more to have it there the next day for a release day.
You said it, not me.
But there's also North Adams is, I mean, there's so many incredible women who are also running businesses up there, which, you know, again, we're kind of new to this world of small business ownership, but it does feel unique too. And I think it's because there's so much opportunity. So whether it's like a couple of vintage stores like Savvy Hive or Terra or Plant Connector, which are all women-owned business, or you know, for a while the brewery was woman-run, sort of in terms of the business operations. A lot of the folks at Taurus are running it, and Meze itself, Nancy, has been you know, just amazing, and what she's done for Williamstown and North Adams community. So I don't know, it's a special place. It's definitely worth the drive. It is, you know, it's amazing. People come to Berkshire County. You think it's, you know, close, but it is an hour drive.
But make
north,
sure if you come to North Adams, go to Massmoka, but then also
stick around,
walk around, drive down to Greylock Works where we are.
Yeah.
Go to the break room.
Yeah, stay at Taurus, and
Yeah.
again, more reasons to just praise you guys is recently on Instagram you just put out like our favorite list. And I don't even know how you did that, but that seems to be something that Instagram allowed you to do.
I learned about that from Nina at Taurus.
I think you're one of the few people that took the opportunity to do something with that feature. But you can go to the Berkshire Cider Project Instagram and see highlights in different areas of what these
all
guys
our
like.
favorite spots in the Berkshire.
All your favorite spots, which I highly recommend hitting all of them. And Emily and I recently just did an overnight for our anniversary up to Taurus.
Nice.
And I truly felt like I was in a totally different place.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, call it a staycation if you want. You know, we did an hour and 20-minute drive and stayed
Far
at Taurus,
enough.
had dinner at Taurus. That was where we met the Chingon crew. They were doing a pop-up there that night. We drove to you. You were closed because we vacation on Mondays.
And that's why we're open Mondays.
Okay.
I mean,
Now
that's-
we are, now
Now
we
we
are.
are. Now we are. Yeah.
Maybe I woke up Tuesday and I was like, I want some cider.
We're also super. I feel like I didn't say this, but it's important to say. It's a special place because also, like, if we look back on who's helped us and who we've sort of hired, whether it's hourly or whatever, for a short period of time, it has been during COVID. It was a group of musicians and sort of someone who now leads hikes on the AT, which goes through there. So folks who were sort of out of work but wanted the hours. For a while, one winter, we had a young woman who runs Fullwell Farm. Mm-hmm. She was like our delivery person and was dealing with the fermentations while we were back and forth. But now she's running this incredible farm, which supplies a lot of the food to various restaurants in North County. It's this incredible place where, especially because where the size we're not necessarily going to lock down a bunch of full-time people, which means we actually get to meet all these different people who maybe are picking up something here or there. We've hired students from Williams College who wanted to come over, who halfway through we found out we had to pick them up because they don't have a car. But that was, you know,
Newsflash, that's how it's always going to work.
We didn't really see it that way, but like that was fine too, and she was the best. So, you know, and then we've had folks who are retired who are picking apples and pressing apples with us and have all these incredible stories about different things they've done in their life. I don't know. That's super rewarding, especially at our size right now. So if you're in North Adams and you wanted to press some apples, bottle some stuff, let us know.
What do you feel now that you're 2 years into it? 2 years
Almost
into it?
3. Well, 3 years.
3, yeah.
Because this is what I'm asking everybody that works with me. What's your biggest pressure point right now?
Which one do you want?
Ooh.
They got a fourth one.
We do.
Do we want to open more?
Let's
Let's
do
open
one.
more.
Let's do one more.
Yeah, doesn't hurt.
What's that one?
Yeah.
Shaker Village?
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Shaker Village.
You guys all familiar with Hancock Shaker Village?
Hancock Shaker Village. Give us a little background on this cider. And then
Hancock
we'll
Shaker
hop into-
Village is actually, first and foremost, it's the oldest working farm in the Berkshires. It goes back to the Shakers, which are sort of a utopian sect, kind of an offshoot of the Quakers. So you get Quakers, you get Shakers. But they built this,
we
these,
shake the trees, so
they,
you know.
They built this beautiful, utopian vision there. There's all these kind of historic buildings, and it kind of covers as an institution now a lot of different things. So you can go there. It has farm, has baby animals, has all that kind of gardens, things like that. It also has these beautiful historic buildings with Shaker furniture is a really big thing, and there's lots of people who are obsessed with Shaker furniture and come
Guilty.
there and buy stuff. High quality stuff,
Guilty.
incredible
For
stuff.
sure.
Shaker hooks, people are familiar with, very utilitarian. Shakers also invented a lot of stuff in the 1800s, like they invented the circular saw or the table saw, something like that.
The flat broom.
The flat broom.
Did you know?
Not a haircut, but a broom. You know.
What's a flat broom?
Like the broom that you like
With
not the witch's broom that's like, round with everything going out,
Mm-hmm.
like the flat broom like you use.
Like a push broom?
Yeah, that's
No, no,
cut
no.
out. Well,
Like the one
kinda.
that you use in
Push
your
broom is
home.
Oh,
evolution of that.
that's cut,
Evolution.
trimmed
Yeah.
to. Okay.
Yeah. So they were
Someone
very,
invented
and
that.
they were very inventive
Why didn't I think of that?
150 years ago.
But they have this beautiful orchard there. We think it's about 75 to 100 years old.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the original Shaker. Apple trees
Yeah.
don't
Beautiful
last
color.
hundreds of years, but
But it's all these like very cider specific apples.
Hubbardston Nunsuch, Roxbury Russet,
Rhode Island
Gravenstein, Rhode Island Greenie.
And what were they doing with them before?
Nada.
Nada.
Truly nothing. They went into some of the CSA. They have a nice CSA there, both fruit and vegetables and meat there.
It's where the baby animals go. They become the meat CSA.
Spilling the beans.
Don't tell your kids.
What's the scene from Ace Ventura? He's like,
We deal with apple guts. That's what we do.
Yeah, don't tell your kids.
okay.
Anyway,
But so they've got these
Beautiful
incredible
orchard.
trees, beautiful orchard, and we kind of called them up and said, "What are you doing with them?" Because one thing we did when we first started this, we knew we wanted a lineup that was like, we want a dry cider, we want a champagne cider, and then we wanted a forage cider. This was before the community project, so Shaker Village was kind of that first. We're going to go out, we're going to harvest apples, we're going to blend them ourselves, and figure out what comes of it. But it's been an incredible partnership as we've also discovered more apples around the property. We're going to plant some trees there as trees kind of, come at their age. It's been a place where we've taught grafting or pruning workshops and had like tasting. It was really fun. We have a cider makers dinner there every year with Bimmy Cafe, which is the cafe there. Really, really excellent chef. And we were able this year to also taste cider that we made from a single tree. So we're also kind of testing, trying to understand what is a Rhode Island Greening? What is this yellow apple that I don't know what it is? How does that contribute to the cider?
Well, because that allows you to the next year as you're doing
Field blend it.
Yeah, you have a little bit of control of
Exactly.
well, I know this is going to give me a lot of bitter, and I want to add a little touch of sweetness, and also a little bit of this, and
Exactly.
knowledge is power.
And I will say, what's interesting about that, so we have done 3 releases of this, which is wild to me, because again, it still feels like we're just starting. And there is something to terroir. And so the first question we get is like, well, how is this different from last year? And we've tasted them all 3 back to back, and there's definite differences, both in the harvest, the apples we chose, the techniques we used. But what's most amazing to me, actually, and this is surprising, is how similar they are, and yet how different that bottle is then from, let's say, our community or a dry, which are similar techniques. So what that tells you, yes, there's some variation year to year, but it really talks about place. So Shaker Village, because it's wild yeast, we don't add yeast to it, we don't really do anything to it other than press it and put it in a barrel and wait for it to kind of finish. That has a specific taste. If we went one farm over, it would have another taste. Certainly when we do the community, it tastes completely different. So that's really exciting and just kind of fun to think about, the story of apples being also of a place, not just of the apple.
Have you tried any pear ciders?
Perry's scary.
Sorry.
Got her.
That's an inside cider maker
still
joke
likes me.
there. Perry scary.
Very scary.
Hilarious.
They also say-
You
say
guys
is
don't
pears,
get that?
The other joke is pears for your heirs. Like pear trees grow, like they take forever to grow and mature.
Yeah.
Pears are so soft. too.
They
annoying
rot
to
so
store.
quickly. They're really, really difficult. So we haven't made a pear yet. I'd love to.
There
if we
is
found the right person, the right
Like
tree.
a crab pear. No?
Well, that's the thing too. So a lot of people around here grow like Bartlett pears or pears that are these kind of culinary pears, much like apples. They don't make great perry. So we put some actually, don't tell the TTB, but some are in our community cider where we get like a handful of pears and maybe they get tossed in, maybe they don't.
Oh, that's what I was getting
Yeah,
on
you were
that.
getting
Oh.
that. You were getting a handful of my fingerprint on a pear. it's a little intimidating. We've been more happy with our quince experiment at this point, but who knows? Who knows what comes next?
Yeah.
We'd like to do more. This is so future looking. As we kind of expand our production, the tasting room grows, and we're going to be able to do more experiments in the tasting room. So even right now, we have some rhubarb cider kind of blending away, and
From 328 Farm.
Yeah, another North County farm, and we have some hop cider, and we want to do some more botanical. I'd love to do, frankly, like dandelion cider, so dandelion wine / cider. We do some grape co-ferments as well. So hopefully the tasting room will offer some of those things, because this is the other difference between cider and beer is people come in, they're like, oh, what's new? We don't release a new cider every week. It's not like a beer where you can just kind of churn it out. So we're trying to come up with ways to have things that are new and keep people coming, but also just learn. I mean, there is such a benefit to our size, and I think this is unique to Berkshire County in that we're able to be small and survive. Because it gives us the time to learn and really perfect the craft, or even figure out what the rules are of this craft.
I went into it the same way.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing, but you know what? We had a great space.
And you guys have changed a lot. I mean, you've really,
a lot.
and that says everything, right?
Yeah.
If you're able
but in
to
the
kind of
beginning,
pivot.
I came up with one menu and was like, okay,
This is it. Yeah.
let's see what happens from here. And sure enough, here we are years later.
Yeah.
So tell me both in your own opinions, what are the kinks in your business model as a food? You are a food product of some sorts, and what are the things that make it extra challenging? And feel free to give as much or as little detail as possible, and rage and turn red or whatever you want, because I know I would if somebody asked me that question today.
I would frame it more as like a learning experience. What have we learned? Because I try and be positive. But no, I mean, we already talked about supply chain, which I think has been a real learning experience. And how do we secure our supply chain or find partnerships that work for us? Because again, we're very committed to sourcing from the Berkshires. So then the problem to solve is, how do we get what we want here? I think the tasting room has been a really big learning experience for us. I'm sure Matt will talk about this, but Matt was dead set against doing flights. He was like, no flights, only glasses. Everyone can be an adult and order a glass of cider and shut up.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah, pretty much. But the truth is, I mean, you have to learn from your customer, and we're not a restaurant. We're not a wine bar as much as we want to be. And hopefully in the future, we will be more of that. Right now, our tasting room is like a corner of our production space. So people are not coming and like hanging out and whatever. So now we offer flights. Those are really annoying, but they're also great and people learn a lot.
To be clear, they're annoying because all flights are annoying at bars,
Yes.
just in terms of serving and glassware. They're not.
We don't have
annoying
the right-
because we love the customer experiencing
Yes.
the flight, and that's really what they're coming for. If they made the journey to North Adams,
Yeah.
they get to taste 6 ciders.
But
which
we
is great.
realize that what we're offering to people is an experience of trying a bunch of things, learning about cider. It's not about coming in, getting your glass, chatting with your friend.
Yeah.
Yet. It's about learning. And so, so that's like all of what we do is just chat with people all day, which we love to do. And
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an interesting thing as we scale that like not everybody can get 20 minutes with each of us every time they come in, as you might feel the same way.
But how can we still provide?
But how
them?
can you still provide that like learning experience, that engagement, that kind of like welcoming feel?
Well, so you were saying about your host or your floor manager,
Yeah.
doing that really good job of selling what it is your vision is and what you're about.
From the beginning, I told every staff member, customers should feel like they got a hug from me and Emily on the way in and on the way out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who they are, but that's the feeling I want to make sure they have.
Yeah.
And giving those people agency too, to, when somebody runs our tasting room, they are a big part of it too. They're part of the team. It's everyone is all in on this kind of vision of what we're trying to bring to cider, what we're trying to bring to North Adams.
I don't know. What are you annoyed by?
Yeah, Matt, what grinds your gears?
She's still in the room. No. Just kidding. No, she keeps this place together. I mean, I can joke about that because it is the opposite of truth. It is. Here's the other thing. I mean, as much of a challenge as I think doing a husband-wife team is, and I think there's real difficulty, certainly keeping your income going, like we both have these other jobs. There's nothing more rewarding than having someone you trust, like deep down, and also who knows you and can call you out on your shit too.
Yep.
Like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, it's deeply important, both just in like how you're managing stuff, but even in flavor. Like, I mean, I have a strong sense of the cider my hands are in, but like, she will cut right through that and be like, well, I don't like that, or that isn't working, or that isn't what I want. And then I have to just completely rethink my ego, right?
Yep. Which is a honest and humble exercise,
Yeah.
but very necessary for growth.
Yeah, it's because that's really interesting, because I think something about these businesses is that experience of taking your kernel of an idea, which you feel strong and you're you're forming in your brain. You're really like kind of flushing out.
You have to believe in it.
But then watching it become someone else's idea, watching it become the person who's managing your tasting room, and then watching it sort of kernel into the customer. And it's going to change each time. It changes slightly each time it becomes that person. Well, this feels very COVID related. I don't know. This is very viral.
But it's funny you say that because
we're just transmitting our ideas.
I think that's a style.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be. You don't necessarily have to be in that way, because there are plenty of restaurants and businesses that are, this is the lane we want to be in. And even after talking to Matt Rubiner a couple weeks ago, I found a whole new level of respect and appreciation for what it is, because he decided, I'm looking for the highest quality things that I love, and I want to share that.
Yep.
And that kind of flipped the script of, I'm a cheese shop that's here for the people, and instead he's like, I'm a show, and this is the show.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love the show.
Yeah.
And
a
lot of people love the show.
Also takes audience. I mean, that's the thing.
Yes.
Any kind of performance is always give and take.
Yeah, and I think a lot of businesses, and I'm not saying you have to be all the way to the left of the customer is always right, but there's an evolution. I think part of that has to do with us as being young, right? We don't know everything.
Thank you kindly.
But the truth of the matter is, Matt is an expert in his lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is no debating that. He has the history and other
there.
things to back it up, where if Matt says something is good, whether or not I like it, I believe him.
Yeah.
I still have, sorry, this is a tangent, but so Rubeners and Matt, they were our second account, and they still get some exclusives. Like they have our Shaker Village. It's one of the only places we distribute outside the shop. I think I'm going to frame this, but I think I took a picture of like the time on Instagram they posted cider from North Adams made the board out front, their handwritten chalkboard, and where they list probably 40 different things. And the time,
I was like, we're on the board.
Yeah, cider from North Adams made the board is like still probably one of the top 5 moments of this business for me.
Yeah.
So thank you to them.
Yeah.
It's just the best.
But I would say too, like, yes, I think it's a give and take, and it's a balance between like the customer is always right and this is my vision. I mean, we're like, could we sell a lot more cider if we made like
Cans.
like Blue Crush raspberry cans, like probably.
Yeah, probably.
Coming next week.
But so it's a balance between those two things. Because I mean, no shade to Blue Crush raspberry cans, but we're not doing that.
There's a
anytime
lesson
soon.
there, though, that, and I say this a lot, so Kat's heard this story, where when we originally were kind of laying out the lineup, we were going to have what we would have called an off-dry cider. So typical British phrase for the cider, which means slightly sweet, right? And we thought we would need that. The problem is that requires pasteurization, because you have to kind of boil the bottle so it doesn't re-ferment when you have sugar in there.
Explode.
Doesn't explode. And that's what is true of Coke and all seltzers and all this other stuff. So, that's a normal process. We just didn't have space for it. We didn't have the money for it. We didn't really want to do it. What we found, actually, when people come in who don't like our cider, And it happens, quite a bit. They come in, they're expecting
flavors
something
do
else.
you
What
have?
flavors you have? How sweet is it? Is Hancock Shaker Village with flavor? Yes, probably.
Does anybody go to a winery and say, what flavor
What flavors
wine
do you have? Yeah,
No,
we have
they say,
red flavor.
I'll have a glass of Pinot Grigio.
Yeah.
This is France.
But we have found
they
that
do happen.
those people deeply respect what we're doing, I think, because it isn't even trying to give them a nod. It's everything's dry, it's sparkling, it's wine driven. And then they say, they'll leave their glasses, half full, and they'll say, thank you so much for that. Best of luck to you. You guys we get what you're doing. You guys are going to do great. I'm going to go next door and get the thing I want. But that's great. And so we've really learned to be super focused now on just what we want to make and clear about the brand and clear about the lineup. And frankly, I hope somebody also comes to Berkshire County and opens the Blue Crush Cidery or whatever. More is more. We could have more cideries here too.
You could open another line.
Please don't make me do that.
My favorite mezcal line is El Jagorio, which is all wildly harvested, single varietals. And then they have Nuestro Soledad, which is all Espadín farmed, much more in the lanes of straightforward, streamlined, mass production kind of thing.
Distribution.
And it goes both ways. It's what are you looking for?
I think it'd be great.
So thank you. Can you please let everybody know how to find you? And also, please note where it is available for purchase for those that can't make the hike or want to pick up a bottle tomorrow morning for lunch.
Yeah. So our cidery is located in North Adams. We're at Greylock Works, and we're currently open Saturdays through Mondays. Hours are on our website. And then we're distributed all around Berkshire County. So down here in the Great Barrington region, we're at Guido's, Rubiners, Berkshire Food Co-op. In Lenox, we're at Nee James, Dare, and Spirited. And then more in North County, Spirit Shop, Wild Oats. Everything's on our website.
Instagram's a great place to follow us for the updates. So Berkshire_cider. You'll see all the updates. You can see all the events we've got. You'll see our North Adams guide, stuff like that. Hopefully more posts as we get into the fall. If you like seeing photos of apples, have I got an account for you?
Yeah.
So,
and what
dogs, maybe.
So many dogs.
A lot of
what
dogs.
restaurants
dogs.
are it available at?
Thank you
that's
so
great.
much. Cantina is our only South County restaurant at the moment. Any other restaurateurs want to bring us on board? In North County, we're at Meze, Public, and the Break Room.
What's unique, though, Cantina, I think, is the only restaurant with our champagne on right
That's
now.
correct.
Yeah. So what's actually really fun.
Pop some bottles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's been fun is figuring out what kind of ciders fit best. Because we're so small, we actually got to kind of curate. So you brought this to us when we tasted some stuff, but it's the perfect fit for that champagne, where that champagne would not do well at wherever else we are.
Yeah.
And at other places, our dry cider, which is our flagship. If you're at the Barn, which is at the Williamstown Inn, you're visiting your kid in the fall, our dry cider is just flowing. Parents love it. It's local. It's great. But our champagne wouldn't necessarily do well there because it's, a different kind of restaurant. And the Break Room next door to us has our bittersweet on. So it's kind of fun, too. You can kind of move around and see what fits. And Meze does a great job of pairing ciders with different things seasonally. So
Yeah.
And
hopefully
we're
you'll see us
and we're
more.
soon going to have Billy pick some up and potentially start exploring some mixes with it.
Yeah.
As
They do
well.
make great cocktails. So that's the other thing. In the tasting room and in some of the restaurants, we're encouraging this idea of cocktail making with cider. It's a great stand-in for Prosecco or any kind of spritz. We make shrubs, which is like a vinegar-based kind of spritz in the cidery, and that's a great way to get a little sweetness too if someone wants sweetness with a dry cider
I
kind of
can't
floated
wait.
on top.
Can't wait to see what Billy does with
Yeah.
our cider.
Ooh, your moon cloud will be wild.
Let's go up there and drop him off a couple things
Sounds
to
good.
play with tonight. But thank you guys. And
Thank
in
you.
proper spirit, cheers.
This is great.
Cheers.
Salud.
Salud.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
What a
And
fucking blast.
good times. We'll see you guys next time. Reminding everybody that we're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. And I'll see you guys next time. Salud.
Woohoo!